5.4.31. Once the Exalted One was dwelling near Savatthi at Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's park, and there Sumana, the Raja's daughter, with a following of 500 royal maidens in 500 chariots, came and visited him, and after saluting him sat down at one side. So seated she spoke thus to the Exalted One. Lord, suppose two of the Blessed One's disciples were similar in faith, similar in virtue, and similar in wisdom, but one was an alms giver and the other was not. Both on the breaking up of the body after death would be reborn in the happy heaven world. But among the Devas, Lord, would there be a distinction, a difference between them? And the Buddha said, there would be, Sumana. The alms giver, when come to Deva state, surpasses the non-giver in 5 ways, in divine lifespan, beauty, happiness, honor, and power. In these 5 ways, Sumana, the alms giver, when reborn to a Deva state, surpasses the non-giver. And Sumana asked, but if, Lord, faring on thence, they should return to this state here, that means when become human, Lord, would there be a distinction, a difference between them? There would be, Sumana, said the Exalted One. The alms giver as man surpasses the non-giver in 5 ways, in human lifespan, beauty, happiness, honor, and power. In these 5 ways, Sumana, the alms giver as man surpasses the non-giver. But if both, Lord, were to go forth from the home into the homeless life, when gone forth, Lord, would there be a distinction, a difference between them? There would be, Sumana. And the Exalted One said, the alms giver, when gone forth, surpasses the non-giver in 5 ways. He is often asked to accept a robe. He is not rarely asked. Often to accept alms, not rarely. Often to accept a lodging, not rarely. Often to accept medicines for sickness, not rarely. And with whomsoever he dwells in leading the holy life, such folk mostly act towards him with cordiality in their ways of living, talking and thinking. It is rare for them not to act cordially to offer service, seldom without cordiality. In these 5 ways, Sumana, an alms giver, when gone forth, surpasses the non-giver. But Lord, if both win arhatship, in that state would there be a distinction, a difference between them? In that case, Sumana, I verily declare that there is no difference whatsoever. That is to say, comparing liberation with liberation. And Sumana said, it is amazing, Lord, it is wonderful, Lord, how far-reaching is the effect of giving alms and doing good deeds, since they are a help and a boon to one as a Deva, a help and a boon to one as a man, yea, a help and a boon when one has gone forth. It is even so, Sumana, it is even as you have just said. That's the end of the sutta. Here in this sutta, you find the Buddha is saying, when we give alms, when we do charity, this merit follows us not only to the next lifetime, it follows us for a few lifetimes. And because of giving alms, giving food to monks, you attain 5 things. You get a long life, you get beauty, you get happiness, you get honor. That means you are well known, and the last one, you have power. These are the 5 things. And so you find the Buddha said, after you go to heaven, you have these 5 things more than the person who is not an alms giver. And after that, you come back to the human realm as a human being. You still have these 5 things, surpassing a person who does not do so much charity. And when you go off you go forth as a monk later on in a future lifetime, then you get a lot of offerings made to you. Whereas another person who seldom does charity, when in the future lifetime he becomes a monk, few people want to offer him things. His blessings is not so much. But however, when he becomes an arahant, the state of one arahant with another is the same. The state of arahantship. So there's no difference. That is why the state of an arahant, whether he's a Pacheka Buddha or a Sammasambuddha, the liberation is the same. That is mentioned in one sutta, where the Buddha was asked, what is the difference between a Sammasambuddha and his Arahant disciple? And the Buddha said, the Arahant Sammasambuddha is one who discovers again the Aryan Eightfold Path, and he walks the path, he's very familiar with the path, and he expounds the path, he teaches the path to many. And his Arahant disciples follow the same path after him. If they follow the same path after him, they will definitely reach the same place. That's why basically there's no difference between an Arahant and a Sammasambuddha and a Pacheka Buddha.
Sutta number 5.4.32. Once the Exalted One was dwelling near Rajagaha at the squirrels' feeding ground in the bamboo grove, and there Chundi, the Raja's daughter, attended by 500 maidens in a like number of chariots, came and visited him, and after saluting sat down at one side. Thus seated, Chundi, the Raja's daughter, spoke to the Exalted One thus: Lord, our royal brother Chunda says this: when a woman or man has taken refuge in the Buddha, has taken refuge in Dhamma, has taken refuge in the Sangha, abstains from taking life, from taking what is not given, from adultery, from lying and from indulging in liquor, causing idleness, he will surely arise on the breaking up of the body after death to a fair cause, not an ill one. But I, Lord, would ask the Exalted One, with one's trust in what sort of teacher will one surely arise on the breaking up of the body after death to a fair cause and not to an ill one? With one's trust in what sort of Dhamma, what sort of Sangha, and what sort of virtuous practices must one perform to arise after death to a fair cause and not to an ill one? Whatsoever beings there are, Chundi, whether footless, two-footed, four-footed, or many-footed, whether with bodies or without, conscious or unconscious, or neither conscious nor unconscious, of them the Tathagata, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one, is declared the best. Whosoever put their trust in the Buddha, put their trust in the best, and unto them is the best reward. Whatsoever Dhammas are formulated or not formulated, Chundi, of them the Dharma of Dispassion is declared the best. I mean the crushing of pride, the quenching of thirst, the rooting out of lust, the cutting off of rebirth, the destruction of craving, dispassion, making an end, nibbana. Whosoever put their trust in this Dhamma, put their trust in the best, and unto them is the best reward. Whatsoever Sangha or communities there are, Chundi, of them the Sangha of the Tathagata's disciples is declared the best. That is to say, the 4 pairs of men, the 8 persons, that community of disciples of the Exalted One, which is worthy of offerings, worthy of gifts, worthy of oblations, fit to be reverently saluted, the world's peerless field for merit. Whosoever put their trust in this Sangha, put their trust in the best, and unto them is the best reward. Whatsoever virtuous practices there are, Chundi, of them those loved by the Aryans are declared the best. That is to say, those unbroken and without a rent, untarnished and without blemish, bringing freedom, praised by the wise, incorrupt and conducive to concentration. Whosoever perform the virtues loved by the Aryans, perform the best, and unto them is the best reward. That's the end of the sutta. So here, the Buddha is saying that the best teacher to follow is the Buddha himself, not any other teacher. It was decided at the Second Sangha Council, about 100 years after the Buddha's passing away, that if any monk teaches and we listen to him, we should follow what he teaches only if what he teaches is in accordance with what the Buddha taught in the Dhamma Vinaya. And you had heard earlier in one of the suttas in the book of in the chapter of the Force, that the Buddha said that we should compare whatever monk teachers with the suttas and the Vinaya. So that is why we have to be very familiar with the Dhamma, the suttas and the Vinaya, to be sure that whatever teacher teaches us is teaching us what the Buddha himself says, because our one and only teacher is the Buddha. Other monks are what are called Kalyana Mitta, good knowing friends who introduce us to the Buddha's teachings. And then in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, about when the Buddha was about to pass into Nibbana, one of the monks asked him, in future, Bhagavan, when you are no more around, who should we take as our teacher? And the Buddha said, take the Dhamma Vinaya as your teacher. So it is very clear that nowadays we must take the Dhamma Vinaya as our teacher now that the Buddha has passed into Nibbana. So that is why I always stress the suttas as being the very foundation of the holy life. And then of the Dhammas, the Dhamma of Dispassion is declared the best. The crushing of pride, the quenching of thirst, the rooting out of lust, the cutting off of rebirth, the destruction of craving, making an end, Nibbana. This is the kind of Dhamma we should pursue. When we practice the holy path, it is not actually concerned with getting this and getting that. Some people are very concerned about getting this and getting that, the paths and the fruitions and getting the knowledges, etc. But actually it is the cooling, making an end, that is important. It is just cutting off all our desires. Because if you remember, the three types of craving that bring us back to the round of rebirths. One is craving for sensual pleasure. Second one is craving for existence. And the third one is craving for non-existence. This craving for non-existence means that we pursue this idea of non-existence too much, in the sense that the mind is too agitated about it. When the mind is too agitated, there is no cooling of the mind. Nibbana is concerned with cooling of the mind, letting go. Whatever thoughts, etc., we have to let go. Even this excessive desire for non-existence, that has to be put down. That is why it is a dispassion. Here the Buddha says the quenching of thirst, rooting out of lust, etc. And of all the sanghas, the communities there are, the Buddha said the best one is his disciples. The disciples are always called savakas in the Pali. And savakas means hearers. The Buddha always called his disciples hearers because they hear, they listen to his suttas. And because of listening to his suttas, his teachings, they have unshakable faith in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. That is why the Buddha generally refers to his disciples as being Aryan disciples. Once you have a very good foundation in the Dhamma, in the teachings of the Buddha, it is natural that a person from there becomes an Arya. And here the Buddha says the 4 pairs of men, the 8 persons. The Aryans are always 8 persons. It is not 4 persons. It's always 8 persons. And that's about the comments I like to make. And the last one is the precepts. We have to keep the precepts, the virtues, and that is the Aryan virtues, the precepts that are laid down by the Buddha. Sutta 5.4.33. Once the Exalted One dwelt near Badia in Jatiya Grud, and there Uggaha, Mandaka's grandson, paid him a visit, and after saluting, sat down at one side. So seated, he said to the Exalted One, Lord, let the Exalted One accept a meal at my house tomorrow. He as the 4th, with us 3. The Exalted One accepted by his silence. Then Uggaha, Mandaka's grandson, seeing the Exalted One had accepted, rose from his seat, saluted and took his leave, keeping the Exalted One on his right. Now when the night was over, the Exalted One, robing himself in the morning, took bowl and cloak and went to Ugaha's house, and there sat down on the seat made ready. And Ugaha, Mandaka's grandson, served and satisfied the Exalted One by hand with plenty of hard and soft food. And when the Exalted One had removed his hand from his bowl, he sat down at one side. Thus seated, he said, Lord, these girls of mine will be going to their husbands' families. Lord, let the Exalted One counsel them, let the Exalted One advise them for their good and happiness for many a day. Then the Exalted One spoke to them and said, Wherefore, girls, train yourselves in this way, to whatsoever husband our parents give us, wishing our weal, seeking our happiness, compassionate because of compassion. For him we will rise up early, be the last to retire, be willing workers, order all things sweetly, and be gentle-voiced. Train yourselves thus, girls. And in this way also, girls, we will honor, revere, esteem, and respect all whom our husband reveres, whether mother or father, recluse or holy man, and on their arrival will offer them a seat and water. Train yourselves thus, girls. And in this way also, girls, we will be deft and nimble at our husbands' home crafts, whether they be of wool or cotton, making it our business to understand the work, so as to do and get it done. Train yourselves thus, girls. And in this way also, girls, whatsoever our husband's household consists of, slaves, messengers, and workfolk, we will know the work of each by what has been done, their remissness by what has not been done. We will know the strength and the weakness of the sick. We will divide the hard and soft food, each according to his share. Train yourselves thus, girls. And in this way also, girls, the money, corn, silver, and gold that our husband brings home, we will keep safe watch and ward over it, and act as no robber, thief, spendthrift, wastrel therein. Train yourselves thus, girls. Indeed, girls, possessed of these 5 qualities, women on the breaking up of the body after death are reborn among the devas of lovely form. That's the end of the sutta. This is one of the suttas which is completely devoted to lay persons. It is not a deep sutta, it's a very practical sutta where the Buddha is advising these young girls who are just about to be married or just married, that they should do their duty as a housewife. First one is to be good to their husbands and rise up early, sleep, be the last to sleep, and be gentle voice, etc. And the second one, whoever the husband respects, whether it's mother or father or a monk, etc., then the wife also should do the same. And the third is that she should be skilled in the husband's business, because in those days their business was some home craft, whether of wool or cotton, etc., and then she should train herself also. And the fourth is that whatever the household workers, that she should know to judge their work and to give them their food according to their share. Then the fifth one is not to waste whatever money the husband brings home, to spend it carefully and look after it. So, in the former days, it was like this, where women were, in a way, sort of play second fiddle to the men. And in those days, because women were a bit more submissive, they tended to be more, not so much divorce, not so much fighting and quarrels in the home. And because the man wears the pants in the house, then the women have to be submissive. But nowadays, A lot of women work, so sometimes it causes some problems because sometimes women tend to wear the pants in the house, and but whether it's the old system or the new system, everything has its good and bad points. Now the next sutta is 5.4.34. Once the Exalted One dwelt near Vesali at the gabled hall in Mahavana, and there General Siha paid him a visit, saluted him and sat down at one side. So seated, the general said to the Exalted One, "Is it possible, Lord, to show the visible result of giving?" "It is possible, Siha," said the Exalted One. "The almsgiver, Siha, the charitable man, is good and dear to many folk. Since it is so, Siha, this is the visible result of giving. Again, the good and wise follow him. Since they do so, Siha, this is the visible result of giving. Again, a good report concerning him goes about. Since such occurs, Siha, this is the visible result of giving. Again, whatever company he enters, be it nobles, Brahmins, householders, or recluses, he enters with confidence and untroubled. Since he does so, Siha, this is the visible result of giving. Again, the almsgiver, the charitable man, on the breaking up of the body after death, is reborn in the happy heaven world. Since that is so, Siha, it is hereafter the result of giving." When he had thus spoken, General Siha said to the Exalted One, "Lord, those four visible results of giving declared by the Exalted One, not as to them go I by faith in the Exalted One. I just know those things. Lord, I am a giver, a liberal man, am good and dear to many folk. Many good and wise men follow me. A good report concerning me goes about. People say, General Siha is an almsgiver, a worker and a servant of the Sangha. Whatever company of nobles and so forth I enter, I do so with confidence and untroubled. I do not go by faith in the Exalted One's words in regard to these things. I just know them. But when the Exalted One says to me, Siha, a giver, a liberal man, on the breaking up of the body after death, is reborn in the happy heaven world, it is this that I do not know, and it is herein that I go by faith in the Exalted One's words. It is even so, Siha, it is verily just as you say, said the Buddha. That's the end of the sutta. So here there are several advantages of being a charitable man. First, a charitable man is good and dear to many people. Secondly, the good and wise people follow him. Thirdly, he has a good reputation. People say good words about him. And fourthly, whatever company he joins them with confidence. And the fifth one is that after death he is reborn into the heaven world. But probably you can add another one, is that when a person is about to pass away, a person who has been a charitable man, he's got a lot of merit to boost him up, so he has confidence. Whereas a person who has not done much good deeds, has not accumulated much merit, at the time of death, that person is very scared. Doesn't have enough merit and blessings to support him. Now another sutta, 5.4.36. The Buddha said, "Monks, there are these 5 timely gifts." "What 5? "One gives to the newcomer, to one going away, to the sick, when food is hard to get, the first fruits of field and orchard, he first sets before the virtuous. Monks, these are the 5 timely gifts." That's the end of the sutta. Here the Buddha is talking about the gifts that a lay person can make to a monk. The first one is to make an offering to a newcomer. That means a new monk who has just come into the monastery. And Perhaps he might come in on an empty stomach. On the way he might not have eaten something. So a lay person who comes to the monastery regularly, he might offer something to this monk, for example in the evening, something that is allowable, for example honey or sweets or cheese or whatever is allowable in the monastery. And the second one, to one going away. Sometimes a monk going away to another monastery, especially in the Buddha's days. In the Buddha's days, sometimes monks, they walk long distances. So a monk going away might be going on a long journey to another monastery, and along the way sometimes it might be difficult to get food. So the Buddha, in his wisdom, sometimes made certain allowances. For example, if a monk expected that he's going to walk on a long distance, and along the way there might not be people to offer him food, it was allowed by the Buddha that a monk could carry food with him, could bring along food with him, provision, so that he could sustain himself. So a lay supporter could offer a monk going away some food. And then to the sick, the third one, when a monk is sick, there are certain allowances also allowed. That is why, for example, there are certain sutta where it is mentioned that a lay devotee would bring, for example, clear meat soup to a sick monk in the afternoon or in the evening if the monk is sick, or prepare some special food for the monk that is suitable for him because of his sickness, etc. And the fourth one, when food is hard to get, when there's a famine or something, then when the monks go on alms round, pindabat, might be difficult to get food. So if a lay supporter knows, he might bring more food. And then fifth one, the first fruits of field and orchard, he first sets before the virtuous. These are concerning farmers. Farmers, when their crops bear fruit, or their fields bear fruit, then the first harvest, they will supply to the monastery. Those are what devoted followers of the Buddha would do. These are called the timely gifts. Then another sutta 5.4.39. The Buddha said, Seeing five things, monks, parents desire a son born in the family. What five? He that is helped, he will help us. Secondly, for us he will do what must be done. Thirdly, long will he keep up traditions. Fourth, worthily possess his heritage. And fifth, make offerings to the ghosts when we are dead. Monks, seeing these five things, parents desire a son. This sutta mentions a son, but it is equally applicable to a daughter also. The first one, it is said, he that is helped, he will help us. This probably concerns, for example, they think when they bring up a son, that the son can also help them, for example, work in the fields, or help them to earn their living. Secondly, for us he will do what must be done. That means when parents are old, probably they expect the children to take care of them. Thirdly, he will keep up the traditions. These are certain family traditions or religious traditions, etc. that certain families or certain races or certain people, they practice. For example, Chinese, they like to have this family ancestral tablets, and they expect the children to pay respect to this ancestral, what they call ancestral worship. And some families, they have some business, and they expect the children to keep up their business. And some people, perhaps they are supporters of certain ascetics or certain monks, and probably they expect the children also to support these monks because that is their religion. So this is keeping up the traditions. Then worthily possess his heritage. That means he inherit his parents' properties, etc. He should be worthy of it. And lastly, make offerings to the ghosts. These make offerings to the ghosts because in the Buddhist belief that when a person has become a ghost, that person is in a state of suffering. So going here and there, trying to look for food, it might be difficult. So sometimes it's quite often that ghosts come back to their relatives and hoping that the relatives could help them. So that is why it is an Indian tradition that when our relatives have passed away, we make offerings and hoping that the relatives can get it. Either we can make offerings and before we make offerings we can pray and tell the dead relatives that we are going to make some offering to a temple or something, to a monastery, and we are doing it on their behalf, so that whatever merit or blessing that accrues, we will pass it to them. That's one way. Another way is in the old Indian tradition, we read in the suttas, is that they make offerings of food and they pray, and after that they burn the food. That used to be an old Brahmin tradition. So this is some of the things that parents expect their children to do. And actually it is good for parents to tell their children all these things, because nowadays a lot of these things we don't teach the younger generation, and they don't study the suttas, so they don't know all these things. So we have to teach the younger generation all these things, because you can't expect them to carry out all these things that you want them to do if they don't know about them. So there are many things that children should be taught, and it is a parent's duties to teach them concerning, especially concerning religion and the duties that they should do. That is Sutta 5.4.40. The Buddha said, monks, the great sal trees supported by Himalaya, the king of the mountains, grow in 5 growths. What 5? They grow in branches, leaves and foliage. They grow in bark, in shoots, in pith. They grow in heart or hardwood. Monks, the great sal trees or sala trees supported by Himalaya, the king of the mountains, grow in these 5 growths. Even so, monks, folk within a home supported by a believing clan chief grow in 5 growths. What 5? They grow in faith, in virtue, in learning, in generosity. They grow in wisdom. Monks, folk within a home supported by a believing clan chief grow in these 5 growths. These 5 things that a lay person can grow in are very important, good qualities. Faith, virtue, learning, generosity and wisdom. Stop here for a while. These 5 qualities, the first one is faith. Faith refers to like faith in the triple gems, the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. That means if you grow in this faith in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, this is one of the very good things. The second one, in virtue. That means being virtuous, good moral conduct, keeping the precepts. Third one is learning. Learning means knowledge of the Dhamma, knowledge of the Buddha's teachings. That means the suttas.
And the fourth one is growing in generosity. That means becoming less selfish, becoming more generous, becoming more open-handed. As the Buddha says, whatever people ask of you, you try to give if you can. And the fifth one is wisdom, to grow in wisdom. Grow in wisdom is a natural result of learning and meditation. So here it says, supported by a believing clan chief, a person can grow in these ways. But nowadays, in the modern times, we don't have this clan chief. It's like a village chief. And now, like very few lay persons would be able to like teach the Dhamma to somebody else. So, and concerning this, is more of a monk's duty to teach these things.